Thank you for joining us for Unlocking Gemini, Empowering Educators with AI in Education. And as you can see, the link is also on the screen there, but I'm going to go ahead and move right along. There are several members of the DTL team here with us, or DLSC team, I guess, as we are now. And so Stacy, Jordan, Aaron, and Jennifer are all here. And I think I saw Meredith pop in, so there'll be plenty of people to manage the chat. If you want to drop a question or a comment or anything in the chat, we'll have plenty of people to kind of keep up with that. And so by way of introduction, my name is Vera Cabero, and I'm the Emerging Technologies Consultant for the Department of Public Instruction. And my LinkedIn information is there, as well as my X information. I'm really most active on LinkedIn, so love for you to join, connect on there if you're also on LinkedIn. If you're not, it's a great place, really. That's my PLC these days, the last couple of years. And so I encourage you to check it out if you haven't. But just to help us get started, help get a feel for the audience and where you are, if you don't mind, if we were in person, we'd hold up our fist and our fingers. But since we're not, if you don't mind just dropping a number in the chat that represents where you would be on a fist to 5, with the fist being no experience and 5 being expert level, you could teach this yourself. And I might ask you to hop in and help me if you do. But if you don't mind just dropping that in, that gives me a good gauge to go by. Okay, and it looks like we have some 2, 3, several 4s. Okay, and I'll just keep watching that. Looks like we have quite a few 4s, quite a few 3s. Hello, Jana from Texas. Glad you could join us. 4.5. Okay, high school science teacher, 2. Okay, it looks like we've got mostly people who have some experience with generative AI, which is good. If we have anybody brand new, you're welcome as well. But I just kind of like to know going into it. So I appreciate you participating in that. And we'll keep rolling along then. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of talk about the foundation about Gemini for education in particular. We're going to talk a little bit about crafting effective prompts. And then we're going to dig into some specific things you can do in Gemini, many of which you cannot do in other tools. So each one of the large language models has strengths and weaknesses and use cases. And I'm not advocating that you should only use Gemini, but it is a great tool to have in your tool belt, along with others. I use on a daily basis, usually at least 3 different generative AI tools, sometimes several more. And so this is just one of many fantastic tools, and it is one that is built specifically for education. And so we'll talk about that a little bit and go ahead and get started. So why is Gemini different? And we'll talk about specifically the data privacy and security is the biggest difference. If you're using Gemini on your school issued account, or if you're with a company, if you're on an enterprise account, has a lot of the same protections, but you have some data protections that are not offered if you're using Gemini using your Google account. If you just go to your Gmail account and sign in, it's a whole different platform. Same thing is the difference between using your ChatGPT on a personal account or using the new ChatGPT for teachers. And so when you're using the EDU account for Google, you get some data protection guarantees that they will not train on your data, that no humans are going to be reviewing that data. And the education version has a different little walled garden experience also, in particular for students. It has some age-based restrictions on students, things that that students can't do that adults can. But another thing that's different about Gemini is that it is built for education version is built on something called LearnLM. And LearnLM is a large language model that was fine-tuned specifically for learning. And they've put out a lot of research about it, and they've really dug into the learning sciences, consulted with a lot of professionals in that field. And so it is going to be a little different because of that. It's going to behave a little differently, and we'll look at some examples. But it's also, I think for a long time in AI years anyway, since we've only been living in AI years for about 3 years, but for the first couple of years of that time, Gemini was kind of the redheaded stepchild of the large language models. It had a lot of false starts and rocky beginnings, and most people considered it to be subpar. And that is no longer the case. And so for anybody who is not keeping up with it real closely, they really have up until recently, when ChatGPT released the new 5.2 model, they had actually topped the leaderboards for a while. And so it's always kind of this race that's going between the large language models. But Gemini has come a long way, so to speak. And so we're going to look at that a little bit. And what happened was back in November, they rolled out a new model called Gemini 3. And Gemini 3, well, even before that, they kind of came onto the scene with the Nana Banana, which you might have heard, their image generator, and that kind of helped them accelerate a little bit. Then Gemini 3 came out, and Gemini 3 is really a very, very powerful model. It is on par with, your top models from ChatGPT, from Anthropic, and the other large language models. And so this kind of summarizes it a little bit, why it's so powerful. For one, it is the master of multimodality. It can understand text, image, video, audio, and code all together in the same prompt, which is something that a lot of the models are kind of advancing in that way. But it does a really, really good job with that. It has much deeper reasoning. The thinking models, which I don't like the term, but that is the term they keep using. But those processing models are coming a long way too, and they have a version of that does a really, really good job of solving more complex issues, synthesizing between things. And then also there is some kind of agentic behavior that you can get into with it. Not necessarily in the education version, but it does have that capability. But it also has a massive context window, up to 1 million tokens. And so that is a lot. And that you can do vibe coding in it. But thinking of education in specifically, the Gemini for education is the only large language model, the only frontier model, I should say, that is available for the K-12 space right now. Claude's Anthropic model is not available for under 18 at all. ChatGPT, you can get an account at 13, but they don't have a school-specific version for K-12 at this time. They have an education version for college, but not for K-12. And so it is the only one. And according to Google, you can use Gemini at all ages in the education environment. And so you could, kindergarten through 12th grade, allow students to use it. Now, in North Carolina, we do not recommend that. We continue to recommend against the use of any chatbots in elementary, and particularly a frontier model like this. I would strongly discourage the use of it with our little students. But in 6th grade through 12th, you could turn this on. Now, just like everything else in the Google for Education environment, that is going to be based on your Google administrator in your district. And so just because I'm saying that doesn't mean all the kids in your district are on the tool. The administrator has to allow it. And so and some may have it. Put in, if you don't mind, drop in the chat if there's anybody whose district does allow Gemini for students. I would be curious to know that. If you want to drop in the chat. I know I've talked to a few districts across the state where they are piloting it with grades 6 through 12, but I'm just curious if anybody on the chat is in that situation. And so a little bit more about Gemini 3. We're going to look mostly at the web app today and things you can do in the web app. But Gemini 3 is powering all kinds of things in the Google environment now. And Google's really working hard to kind of connect all these things together into one ecosystem. And so it powers Google Drive integrations. There's things you can do in Google Drive now that help you kind of sort your folders, and it will preview documents for you and things. It powers Notebook LM, which I'm super excited about, a Notebook LM webinar I'm doing on January 7th. It's hard for me not to just talk about Notebook LM the whole time, but I'm going to refrain myself today because I'm doing a separate webinar on that. It also powers Gemini and Chrome, AI mode and search. And then lots of people are using the Gemini API or MCPs to power their web apps. And if you have a plus model of Gemini or Google for Education, or you have a Gemini add-on, it's used in the Google Vids to create AI generated videos as well. And so lots of places where the tool is being used, and Gemini 3 is the underlying model for all of those. And so the companion document, I did drop that in the chat, and I see Stacy dropped it again. But if you don't have it yet and you have this open, you can click this little image right here and open that companion document. But that will save us a lot of time and allow you to kind of prompt along with me, because there'll be lots of prompting going on today. Okay, so first of all, when we're looking at Gemini models, there are multiple versions of it. Not nearly as many as you see when you go to ChatGPT, but in Gemini, there is the Gemini 3. There's the fast version, and there's the thinking version, and then there's also a pro version that you may have access to depending on your level of access and what your district subscribes to. And so just as a general rule, whichever model you're working with, you want to use the default version, the baseline version, which in this case is considered fast for most
tasks. I will
tasks.
drop off Daniel's violin and music folder at 4:30 p.m. today.
Try to mute someone. Okay, sorry about that. And so you do want to use the fast one for most things. If you're just doing a general query, gathering some information, you want to use the fast one for one reason, because eventually you'll be limited on the number of tokens you can use on thinking, and it will cut you off. But also thinking environmentally, anytime you're using one of those thinking models or those more advanced processes, they do have a larger toll on the environment. Now, the newer tools have a less of environmental impact as the others, but there is still an environmental impact. And so we don't want to just use them for no reason. But when you're doing a really complex search, a complex process where you having AI synthesize or do multiple steps or something really challenging, then you might want to switch to thinking. And so as a rule of thumb, start with the fast. And if that's not getting it, then you might want to move to the thinking or even the pro if you have access. As far as prompting, just some basic guidance. Now, as the models improve, the prompting guidance gets simpler because the models are getting smarter and you don't have to give them as much information. But just as a general rule, you always want to give it a lot of context. And so provide details so the model's not guessing. That's where you get subpar results if you haven't given it enough context to go by. So things like role, audience, the background, the constraints that you're dealing with, giving it an input, a reference material is also a great thing to do. But you also want to tell it a goal. You want to tell it what you want it to accomplish. Or you want it to summarize, draft, analyze, compare, plan, code, and you want to give it a specific outcome so that you're getting it in the outcome you want. So you can give it a specific format style. And then the most important thing is this human element here of iterating. Whatever prompt you give, you want to make sure that you're overseeing it and engaging and using feedback and making sure that it meets your expectations. And so that's just basic prompting. And most of you, I think, are 3s and 4s, so you know that already. I'm not going to dwell on that much, but I'd just like to share that for anybody who may be new to the game. And so first of all, we're going to look at Gemini. I'm going to open it up and we're going to look at some different things. But these prompts are on the prompting or on the companion document, which I'm going to slide over here and just kind of preview with you. And so on the prompting document, as we go through, they're numbered, and I'll try to go in order. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this little prompt right here. I'm going to open Gemini and I'm going to start a new chat. And I'm just going to drop that in without selecting the guided learning, just so that we can see how the behavior is different. And so I'm going to also change it to fast. So this is your model selector for Gemini. We're just talking about the models. And we have a fast, which is the default, a thinking, and then a pro. And I think you only get pro if you have an upgraded subscription in Google for Education. So I'm just dropping it in. What is the answer to the equation and giving it an equation? And so as you'll see, it is evaluating it, and it should go fairly quickly. And so it's going to go in and show me how to do it. It's not going to just say X equals 8. It's going to kind of walk through the process of how to do it. But I want you to see how the behavior changes when you change it to a guided learning prompt, because that's one of the things that Google offers. And so I'm going to start a new chat. And if you look under your tools here, you'll have several tools available to you. And the first one is guided learning. And so I'm going to take that exact same prompt and drop it into guided learning. And I'm going to, again, make sure that it is set to fast. And then I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see how the behavior changes, because the guided learning mode is set up and trained to work as a tutor. Instead of giving the answer or even giving the solution, how to solve it, it's going to take me step by step through how to solve it. And it's going to explain each step along the way. And so it says to solve it, we're going to need to simplify the left side first so we can eventually get x by itself. The first step is to handle the parentheses using the distributive property, which means multiplying the number outside. What do we get when we multiply 3 by both x and -5? And so instead of just even giving me the whole steps, it's going to walk me through step by step. Now notice that a student would have to select that, and you can't force that mode if students have access to Gemini, but it would walk through step by step and show them how to solve the problem. And so I want to make sure everybody is aware of the guided learning option, because it is a great one. And so it will give them a hint, like it just gave me the hint, and then it will check, you'll give it an answer, it will check it, and then it will give you another hint, and then it will go through and it'll eventually arrive at a solution, but it's going to behave as a tutor rather than an answer machine. And that's one of the really important things that we need to teach our students, is how to use AI as a tutor, as a helper, as something to amplify their own learning instead of an answer machine. So it's a good demonstration to do with your students. But I'm going to go ahead and move along to the next one. And this time we're going to talk about the thinking model, the thinking version of it. And it does take some time. And so I will go ahead and do that. But this one, and we're going to couple it with adding content. And so if you want to prompt along with me, I encourage you to do that. There is a link there to the guidelines. It should link. It didn't link. I thought it was a link, but you can go in and open our guidelines by just typing in that short link and download them. And then we will kind of walk through this prompt together, which is also on the prompting guide. Let me get that thing out of my way. So I'm going to just open up those guidelines, go.ncdpi.gov/NC guidelines. And so if you look at this document, it's 41 pages, just the main document, besides all of the appendixes and stuff. So it's a very lengthy document, very deep, and it has a lot of content in it. And so I'm going to download it first. And notice that now in Google, when you download a document as a PDF, it will ask you if you want just the current tab or the whole document. So I'm going to download all the tabs, and just to let that be downloading. And then we're going to go back to our prompting document. And the second prompt right here for complex reasoning.
Their elementary level, y'all will see a whole lot of referrals. However, the middle school has seen something.
Does anybody, can one of you guys find who that is and mute them? Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to copy this prompt right here. So the prompt is, put your role in it. Please read and summarize the key goals and priorities in the North Carolina Generative AI recommendations and considerations that I've uploaded. Highlight 3 to 5 points most relevant to my role and district context, and briefly explain why they matter and what actions my team should consider. So that is multiple steps that I'm asking it to do, and I'm asking it to synthesize for my role. And thank you, Meredith, dropped it in the chat. So that's the kind of thing you might want to use a thinking model for. And so if you would just copy that prompt, and in your Gemini, we're going to start a new chat again, because I'm not going to be doing thinking model anymore. And this time I am going to switch it to, I'm sorry, I'm not doing the guided learning, switch it to the thinking model, and then just kind of paste that prompt in and just edit it to suit yourself. And so I'm going to say, I am the emerging technologies consultant. Put your role in for, okay. And then you could ask it to do more too. You could say, create a roadmap for me. You could add multiple steps, but I kept it kind of brief because it does take time for these models to run, and I don't want it to get too complex. And so I'm going to go ahead and run that. And then as it's running, and if you've used ChatGPT, Claude, any of the others, they all have a version of this, and they all use the word thinking, which is not something that we like, but they do. And notice that while this one's running, you have a couple of things going on. First of all, it's running Python in the background. And if you're interested in that, you can watch it. But you can also see here that it has a caret, and you can go in and investigate what the model is doing, which I find fascinating to kind of watch. And of course, it will use the first person for itself. It'll say, I've been poring over the document. Key takeaways include, I'm analyzing the content, I'm examining the file accessibility, And so it'll go through this process showing me what it's doing to arrive at the conclusion that I wanted, to give me the output that I wanted based on the context that I gave it. And so when it finishes, then I have my answer here. So I've got what I've asked for. I've got an executive summary that shows the goals and priorities. I have the top 4 highlights for an emerging technologies role. What would I need to know in my role? Stacy, you have your hand up for.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
It says, I'm only seeing VC on the shared screen. I think it's because we're seeing I might be misinterpreting, but we're only seeing the shared document versus seeing your Gemini screen.
Oh, you're not seeing Gemini. Geez, sorry about that. Thank you. I thought I had it set up to share the whole window. So let me try that again. Thank you for pointing that out. So you've not seen anything else I've shared besides the document? Okay, let's see. Let me find the right window then. Where is my window? Gemini. Okay, now are you seeing it? Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know that. You did see it the first time I shared. Okay, good. So I don't feel quite as stupid. But what I was rattling on about is this thinking that it shows while it's working. It shows you the process that it's going through. And then it does arrive at an answer. Okay. And so it did exactly what I wanted. It broke it down, gave me executive summary, and then it broke it down according to my role. What are some things I should do in the strategic recommendations? Okay. Now, before I go farther, though, the next thing that I wanted to show, the next screen, we're going to use that same document and we're going to take it another step further, because I already mentioned Nano Banana earlier, and Nano Banana is their silly name for their image generator that they rolled out a while back, which is really, really good. And so with that same document that I already have uploaded, so I have this text summary, but maybe I want an infographic with that summary. Well, Nano Banana can do that for you. Okay, so the next prompt on the Unlocking Gemini document, number 3, the visual creator, I can take that information that I just asked it to give me, and I can ask it to create an infographic. And you'll notice that I have beautiful graphics in my presentation today, probably for the first time ever. And that's because now I can take my thoughts, which I have thoughts. I'm not just delegating those to the AI model, but I can tell it what I want it to create, and they can make it beautiful, which is not something I'm capable of. And so I'm not a good designer, as Stacy and Jordan, all these other guys will tell you. And so this has really made my world. This is really, really exciting for me. And so now I'm going to ask it to take that, and sketch note style is kind of the thing I do, but you can make it whatever. You can make it claymation, you can make it anime, you can ask for any kind of, watercolor, paper craft, whatever style you want. I just tend to go with the sketch note myself. And so I'm going to take that and I'm going to go back to my Gemini. Now, before you get an image though, you do have to select that from the toolbar. If I just drop that in now, it's going to say, hey, I'm a text model and I can't create images. And so in this model, you do have to select create images before you ask it to create an image. And so now I'm going to say, okay, now generate an infographic to distill the most important information for classroom teachers. So I'm changing the audience, and then I'm giving it some style specifics that I want it to follow. And I'm going to hit enter. And I did do thinking because it generally does a better job with infographics from my experience with thinking. If it's a simpler thing, it might do okay with a fast, but I generally do use the thinking model. And that was pretty fast, actually. And so now from that whole big, probably 60-page document, it's distilled it down to just what a teacher might need to know, just some tips for a teacher. And I could have spelled out and said, these are the tips I want. I could have given it the text also, but I'm being lazy and I'm just having it do the work for me right now. And so and notice that it spells much better than it used to, but I do see a mistake right here. And so sometimes you will still get spelling errors. And I have found that sometimes when I put in the prompt to double check spelling, it's very important that everything is spelled correctly. That sometimes that helps. Sometimes it'll still misspell stuff, but you can get a nice, beautiful graphic pretty quickly and easily based on a very complex source. And if you wanted to copy and paste it, you could. If you wanted to download it, you could. Or if you wanted to go in and say, hey, you made a spelling mistake, I need you to correct the spelling mistake in the every framework, and then let it regenerate. Or you could say, I need you to add these ideas. And so you can iterate on this just like you can on any other prompt. And so that is using it to create an infographic from a document, a very complex document, and it does a pretty good job with that. And I would keep iterating on that, but time is getting away and we have so much more to cover. And so I'm going to just kind of leave that one for now and go back to my presentation. Anybody wants to drop something they created in the chat, we'd love to see it. I normally have a Padlet or something to share, but it didn't do that today, and we normally don't get a lot of people who are sharing, so I would love to see it if you want to share something in the chat. The next one is another way of using that infographic creator, though. That was distilling it. This is using it to create a standards aligned instructional resource. And notice this time I've given it a lot more direction. And this prompt is the next one on the prompting guide or the companion document, if you want to try it and kind of change it up with a standard or a subject that works for you. But you can see here, using Nano Banana again, you have to select the image generator first. But I told it to act as a 5th grade science teacher and introduce the concept of the water cycle, giving it the North Carolina standards, which if you're an educator, I really recommend doing that. I'm giving it the standards. And we have some great ones in the chat. Stacy used a blog of one of the first slides to create that, a Gemini one. And that's what I did, Stacy. I had it create from that same blog. That's cool. Just give it a blog link. I just gave it the link. And then Samantha created something about the North Carolina teachers. Oh, I like yours better than mine, Samantha. Yours looks better than mine. North Carolina Teachers AI Toolkit. And then we have NCDPI AI for Educators from Lakita. That one looks great too. And so again, you can keep iterating on those, but think about all the things in your class, your subject matter, your curriculum that you could use these tools. And again, it's not outsourcing your thinking, it's outsourcing the doing. And in my case, it would be something that if I did it, it would look like I hired the kindergartners to do it. And so it makes it look nice. It makes it look professional. And I think that's fantastic. And so this one created, I'm probably going to skip demoing that one so that we have time to demo some other ones, but just as an example of how you can plug a standard into it. And I always recommend for teachers to include standards. If you're definitely teaching something, there should be a standard aligned somewhere. And I really encourage you to put the standard in and the whole text of it. Sometimes if you say North Carolina 5th grade science, you may or may not get the right standards. And so I always just dump the whole standard in, copy and paste. But it does a pretty good job. And I noticed on this one, just to show out another feature that it has, I told it that I'm teaching a language immersion class that's English and Spanish. And so it created it, and I didn't even say translate it. It just did. And so it also gave it to me in Spanish. Now, some of you, your Spanish might be better than mine, and you might tell me if it has any spelling issues in the Spanish version, but it seems like it did a pretty good job there. Okay. Anybody else wants to drop something in the chat? Love for everybody to see what each other is doing. Okay. Next thing that Gemini has that nothing else has. Deepesh, you can come off mute if you want, or did you?
Yeah, I had a quick demo about how to find if students are exclusively using these and how one could detect that. Can I?
You mean using AI for their work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that one I could do a whole session on, so I'll just kind of answer briefly. But the truth is these models have gotten so good, and students who are good prompters, there is no way to detect it, and the AI detectors do not work. And so the short answer is no, there's not. The much longer answer that I've done multiple full sessions on is we have to change. Instructional design has to change. AI is forcing instructional design change, because if we continue to give them assignments that AI can do, we're at the point in time where we can't tell if AI is doing it. And so it's forcing us to change how we do things and do more AI resistant type work. And that is change is hard, but if you just put an assignment into one of these tools, ChatGPT, Gemini, any of them, just add one of your assignments, upload it, and ask AI how you can do that. I don't want to get too far off on that, or I won't get through all my content today, but you really can't tell if a student is using AI. And the models are getting better, and it's going to get even harder, and it's everywhere in the browsers. It's just too ubiquitous and too good now. So there's really not a way to tell.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so the next thing I wanted to look at though is Storybook, which did come out a few months ago, but it has gotten more impressive because the model has gotten more impressive and the image generator has gotten more impressive. And so since Storybook first launched, they launched the Nano Banana image generator, and then they launched Gemini 3, which is a more powerful model. And so if you haven't looked at Storybook in a while, it was pretty impressive to begin with, but it's more impressive now. And so Storybook will automatically generate an illustrated story from a prompt. And you literally can just go to Gemini and you just say, create a storybook about, and you give it some context, and it will create the storybook for you. And then on the right-hand side, different ideas. It can spark creative writing, develop literacy skills, custom learning stories. But it is important that, going into it, that the way I shared them, I created with my personal Gmail account so that I could share them with you. If you do it on the EDU account, you cannot share a live storybook. And that's something that I've spoken to the Google people about. And it's a top request. And they said they're addressing it. But right now, you can't share a live storybook. You would have to download it or just pull it up on your computer and share it live. But I do want to show you a few examples of a storybook. And then we'll look at a prompt and create one. And so if you look here, these are ones that I have created. And they are standards aligned. You don't have to just create silly things. You can use standards and stories as well. And so the first one right here, I'm just going to click and open because I want you to see also, of course, it's easy to create cutesy stories for little people, but you can use this for your older students as well. So this is one I created on a 7th grade standard in Gemini, and I'm not going to read the whole story. I'm just going to kind of flip through it. And I'll show you my prompt. The prompt is on the document, but it is on the standard and about immigration. And so it goes through the story, and I've asked it to address it to a 7th grader, to a 7th grade level, and it's beautifully illustrated using the Nano Banana Illustrator. Can't say that too fast, I mess up. And so you can see that it does a fantastic job. And just like the other things, you can iterate on it too. I would encourage you to get the best prompt you can get to begin with, but if you don't like it, you can iterate on it. And this one, I asked for reflection prompts, and I wasn't sure if it would work or not. But at the end of the story, it did give me reflection prompts too. So, and that's something that the first time I tried that, but it kind of gave some things to think about and like a little activity on the timeline, and then some teacher notes and some discussion questions at the end. And so that's another idea I hadn't tried before, but it does work. And so if you look in, I'll show you, well, the prompt, you've got it on the document, so I won't go in there. But this is another one using a standard from 2nd grade science on the little light of flicker. And this is when I created a collection of storybooks to teach AI literacy concepts. And so it's a Canva storybook collection, and I won't open that, but I just wanted to share that with you in case it can be useful to you. And so, and there may be more added to that later, but I've actually used it to teach really important concepts to students, like AI is not human. Things that kids need to know, that AI sometimes can be wrong. AI has bias in it. You can teach important concepts with a storybook. And so before we get to this one, I do want to give you just an opportunity. There is a storybook prompt, and it's prompt number 5. And this one I have standards aligned to a 3rd grade science standard, but you could certainly choose a different standard if you want. But just as an example, I've kind of given it a plot, what I want to happen. I've given it an audience. So I want it to teach that there's an egg that turns into a caterpillar, that turns into a chrysalis, and then emerges out of the butterfly. And I could have given it a lot more. You can lay out the whole plot line if you want to. You can use a pretty long prompt. And then also just as a tip, you can use these for creating social stories. And that's something that's really important sometimes for SEL and for some of our special needs students. So this storybook creator can be a great way of doing that. And again, you can lay out the whole plot line if you want to. If you have exact things you want it to happen, you can do that. And then there are the 2 prompts I did. And if anybody wants to create a storybook and drop it in the chat as well, I'm sure everybody else would love to see it. We'll look at some more if you want to drop one in the chat. But we do have about 20 minutes left, and so I still have a few more prompts that I want to do. So I'm going to wait about 2 minutes and just let you explore the storybook idea. And then I think we still have plenty of time to get through the next 2. Okay. Okay, Stacy said instruct it to insert 2 and 3 insert 2 and tier 3 vocabulary.
Yeah, I was typing
You
too
want to
fast, but
explain
if you tell Gemini to, in the storybook, to insert the tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary and type that into the prompt, it's pretty good about incorporating your specific vocabulary words into the storybook. Not, it's not 100%, but it's pretty close. And so you can, get it to be aligned to your standard. You can tell it the plot. You can insert your vocabulary.
Okay, that's cool. Very cool. I hadn't tried that. So anybody else has any good storybook tips that want to share, feel free to come off mute or raise your hand, drop in the chat. While we're waiting, we're going to wait about another minute so everybody has time to kind of play with that a little bit, or wait for your story to generate if you're generating one. Anybody else found anything really successful? Lindsay did a whole webinar on Storybook too. It's on our website. It's called Once Upon a Standard. And so anybody who hasn't explored it a lot and wants to take more time to explore it there, I would encourage you to do that. Stacey, would you mind dropping our AI resources website and link in the chat? I'll reference it again later, so it'll be a good one to have handy as well. Okay, anybody want to share a storybook? You feel free to, well, you can't drop it in the chat if you create it on your AI, on your EDU account, because you can't share it. But if you have ideas about how you might use that with your students or anything you want to share in the chat or come off mute, I welcome you to do that. And if not, we'll move along. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. This is another one that really made my year, not just my day, because I absolutely hate creating presentations. And that's the bane of my existence. And I've been trying for 3 years to find an AI tool to do that for me, and I've tried them all, and I've been disappointed with them. But Gemini now will do that for you, and it does a pretty good job, and it will get better. It does better than any that I've tried so far. And so I do want to kind of demonstrate that for you. And it is kind of like the Create a Storybook. It's just the magic words of create a presentation. And so you tell it to create a presentation, but you do have to select Canvas first. You don't have to do that for Storybook for some reason, but when you're creating a presentation, you do have to select that first. And then you tell it to create it. You give it the number of slides you want. You can upload a reference doc. If you've got a resource that you want it to reference, you can upload it. Provide any kind of design requirements you want, and then it will create it as you see it doing here on the screen. And so we're going to go in and look at that now. And again, there is a prompt for that. If you go to slide 6 in the document, I've referenced a North Carolina standard here, but you could certainly reference any standard you want and change the prompt up. But I'm just going to kind of copy and paste here. And so you can see I'm asking it to create a presentation, teaching students, it shouldn't say structure though. I don't know why I have structure there. So create a presentation teaching students about North Carolina Standard 4G11, which is about our 3 different geographic regions in North Carolina. I've asked for 5 slides, tell what I want on the slides, and speaker notes. I want it to add speaker notes, and enthusiastic and age appropriate for 9 to 10-year-olds. And I'm actually going to take the speaker notes thing. That should be kind of a follow-up, not as part of the prompts. And so that one I should have put down here. So I'm going to put that down there and not copy that in. It might do it, but I don't want to try that live without trying it not live first. And so I'm going to go back into my Gemini, going to zoom it out, and I'm going to, first of all, you have to select Canvas. And if you're familiar with ChatGPT, Canvas, or Claude Artifacts, this is basically the same thing. It will actually code and create interactive elements live. And it's what it uses to create a lot of things, but it uses them to create the storybook. And this time I'm going to go to fast just to make it faster. It might do better if I don't do fast, but I'm going to go to fast, and I'm going to go click it, and we'll see in a minute what it will do. It will actually give you a preview of the presentation right here live in front of you, and then it will give you an export to slides option. And when you export it to slides, it is fully editable. I love creating slides in Notebook LM, but right now they're not editable. Every page in a slide in Notebook LM is an image, and you can't edit it. They're promising they're going to move that way, but for now you can't edit them. So if you're wanting to create slides, which of course this is going to get you maybe 80% of the way there, it's not going to get you 100%. You want to be able to go in and tweak it and edit it and make it work for you. And so creating it in Gemini will allow you to do that. And this has been around for 2 or 3 weeks probably. But as you can see, it has created my slides here. And if I click through it, it gives me a slide on the coastal plain with an image of one of the lighthouses, the Piedmont, the high mountains, and then a review challenge. And so basically that's what I asked for. 5 slides, 1 on each of the regions, a title slide and a closing slide. And I did a short one just because of time, but you'll see up here at the top right-hand corner, you can download it, but you can export it to slides, which if you're a Google Slides user, or if you're like me, you're going to be again. I've been using Canva forever, but when they get this honed down a little more, I'll be switching back because it will make them for me. And so it is creating my slides in the lower left-hand corner. It will give me a button in just a second to open them in Slides and edit them. And thank you for dropping the prompt, Stacy. Okay, now you can see that it says open slides. So again, I can open it right in Google Slides, and I can go in here and change anything I want to about this. I can add more slides, I can change the colors, I can apply a different theme, I can do anything that I want. And what I do, because we have a template that we use, is I'll insert one of my templates, and then I'll just create blank slides and copy the contents and put it on my template, because it doesn't do great yet for following a template. I've tried to feed it my templates and feed it my icons, and it doesn't do great yet of including them, but I expect it to get better. I think that it will. And so that is creating a slide. Oops, and I still got my storybook open in Gemini. And we still have about 15 minutes. But another thing that you can do, kind of one of these magic commands, is you can create interactive flashcards with Gemini. And this is something that rolled out. It was under 18 couldn't do it, but now under 18 can do this as well if you have any students using Gemini. And all you do is ask it to generate a practice quiz on, and you give it a topic. And this one you don't have to, it's just the magic command, kind of like Storybook. You don't have to put it in Canvas or anything. And so you can just say generate what was my words again? Generate a quiz, a practice quiz. So generate a practice quiz on, and I had the hydrosphere, so I'll do that again on the hydrosphere. So I can just say generate a quick practice quiz on the hydrosphere for 8th grade. I don't know what grade does that, but I'm just saying 8th grade science. Am I right, Stacy, or not? I know. I'm guessing. I'm not. I could pull in a standard and probably should, but because of time, I'm just going to put it in because I'm trying to demonstrate the functionality. But you certainly could. Okay. Thank you, Meredith. Shared the link to the recording about the Storybook webinar that Lindsay did. It's really, really good 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so there's a webinar there if you're any questions remaining about it. And she has some great ideas in there on personalizing them and customizing them as well. Okay. So as you can see, I have it calls it a quiz. And so you can just go through in here and you can ask for flashcards too. And notice that it will give you a hint. If you get it wrong, it'll give you a hint and you can keep going through. And at the end, if you go all the way to the end, it does give you some more information. And I don't want to take time to read these. So I'm going to just kind of bomb it and go through and not read them. And it's going to have to give me a lot of help at the end. But I want you to see what it does at the end. I should try to at least get one right, but I didn't. Okay. So it's giving me 10 when the density, salinity increases. I don't want to take time to read these. So I'm just going to click wild and do really bad. And okay, so at the end, if I can get to the end, it will give you, so it gives you a scoreboard. It'll show you what you got, but it also shows you strength and growth awareness. I got a lot of room for growth here. So it's, if you go to analyze my performance, and notice here also, I definitely need some flashcards. I bombed it. So the next step is I can create myself from flashcards. I can create myself a study guide, but it will do analyze your performance. And so you can go here and it will automatically go through and look at your performance and give you some recommendations. For me, it's going to say, you know, you got a lot of work to do. And so tells me, nice job on creating it. You have a solid handle, but I don't. It said I have a solid handle on ocean density, but there are a few foundational concepts. I guess that's the only one I got right. I encourage you to keep learning and diving deeper into the topics. If you want to keep practicing, use the UI to generate more questions, a set of flashcards, or a comprehensive study guide. And so I can click flashcards next, and it will change this to a set of interactive flashcards that I can flip over and practice with. And so again, thinking about this as a learning tool, if I click it, it's going to go back and forth. I can go through here and look at all these flashcards. I could have created the study guide. And if we had more time, we would go through and create all of those. But it's really, really effective learning tools if you have students who do have access to the tool. These are the kinds of things they may not know they can do. And so I would encourage you to show them that they can do them. So I'm going to go to the next one now. So that was a quiz and flashcards. But the next thing is the deep research feature in Gemini is really my favorite of the deep research features. It does take a long time to run, a very long time, longer than the thinking model, because it is basically a semi-agentic behavior. It's using a reasoning model to go out and actually do a job for you. And so, and it will cite it for you. It will give you multiple sources. It will create a research plan. And you do have a limit here, and I think on the EDU plus it's 50. I should have looked up the limits. The limit will be less if you're on the free plan, but I think it's 10 if you're on a free plan. Lost in the storybook building, I do that every time. I hesitate to do anything with that early, but I do have a little framework that I've created for creating deep research, because really it is one that you really need a little more content, a little more direction to do it effectively. And so you need to prompt deeper. And so driving question and a goal to begin with. And what do you expect of evidence? You can specify what kind of resources you want. Do you want just peer-reviewed studies, major research organizations, just educational research, and the extent and the scope? You would definitely want to define a time period in a lot of cases if you want current research. Geography, you want something US based or whatever, grade bands, process and task. What do you want the model to do? Do you want to synthesize, compare, critique, etc.? Expected output format. Now, what do you want your output to look like? And then references and rigor. If you're having it create a research report for you, chances are you're probably going to want to include citations in some formats. It could be MLA, APA, Chicago. You can tell it what format you want. You can tell if you want in-text citations, footnotes, do you want works cited? You can give it all that information and it will actually do it for you. And so accessing it, you will not see it if you have thinking model turned on. And I did not know this until the other day. And I was doing a session, and I half the time I didn't see it and I didn't know why. And I'd never thought to check that, but it only shows up if you have fast model selected. And so I thought something was wrong with my Gemini. But that's why if you don't see it, you just got to go over there and make sure you have fast instead of thinking selected. And so you'll iterate and refine it, share and export it, and then we'll look at some outputs you can create with it. But again, I do have a prompt if you want to use it. If you go to number 6, That is the last prompt I have. It looks like I might actually finish if it will go kind of quickly. And what I'll do is I'll show you, well, it's the next to the last one. So I'm going to copy that text there. And it's just asking to do some research on micro PBL 2.0 and learning portfolios to strengthen the durable skills, asking for current research only. And so again, I'm going to start a new chat because it's a brand new topic. You have to go to tools and you have to select deep research and then paste that prompt in. This one doesn't really need editing unless you just want to. Again, if you don't see deep research, if you have thinking on, deep research, well, normally disappears. Now it's showing now that I said that. Maybe they fixed that bug because it wasn't the other day. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't see it. But I am going to do fast just so that hopefully it goes a little more quickly, even though if I were going to do this, the best depth I would get would be on the thinking model, but for time. Now notice also here, this is something new they've added. You can actually search your organizational information. So I could have it search my Google Drive, my chat, my Gmail, or search. And you can provide files. If you want to provide resource files, you can, reference files. And I don't have any currently to provide it, but you could like upload your standards or your lesson plan or whatever. And then I'm going to hit enter. And as you'll see, the first thing it's going to do is create a research plan. Can't research from, oh, I selected, I guess our organization doesn't let us choose those things. They just have them there to tease us. And so I'm going to turn that off. But if you get that error, it just means your organization does not have that allowed. So I will do search and I'll try it again. And where's my enter button? Whoops, sorry. Okay, I may have to start over. I broke it. I'm going to have to copy my prompt and start a new one because I broke it. I try to let it search Drive, and apparently they don't let us do that. So I'm just going to click Deep Research and just go. But just so you know, your organization may or may not have that turned on. But I'm going to click it. And if you look at the prompt a little more, I've asked it to reference particular people. Tom Markham, Phil Alcott, John Spencer, Dan Jones, and then John Hattie Research. And I've asked it to return the result with MLA citations, in-text citations, and then cite it at the end with MLA format. And so what it's going to do is give me its plan first, and you could modify that plan. If you don't like the plan, it's going to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. You could change it. I'm not going to because of time. You could edit plan and change it, but I'm going to go to Start Research. And just like the thinking model I demonstrated earlier, while it's working, you can watch the thinking or you can watch the sources that it's browsing. And so watch the thinking. Notice it opens in Canvas again, opens it up in Canvas automatically. And this takes some time. And because we are very short on time, I'm going to instead go in and show you one I did earlier. I think I did the same prompt earlier. So I did. So I'm going to go in and show you the one that I finished earlier, the exact same prompt. Nope, that's the one I just broke. I have a deep research demo here somewhere. There it is, deep research demo. So it's a little bit different prompt, but I'm going to show you basically what the output was because I want to get to something else too. So when you get your output, and I'll show you this in a minute, you can do different things with it. Okay, so this is my output. When yours finishes, you'll see a contents button up here, which is a navigable table of contents. You can go anywhere through the research. And of course, you need to read it all thoroughly. And you can see when you have the carets, you can see the exact reference that it used to get that information, which is really important. You can share it. You can export it as a Google Doc, and it'll go straight into your Google Docs, and it'll be nicely formatted. If you copy the contents, it's going to be code. And so it will be HTML code. You could paste that somewhere in an embed code. But what I really wanted to show you is this create feature over here. From this research, I can create several things. I can create a web page, infographics, a quiz, a flashcards, or audio overview, similar to Notebook LM podcast. But I can also create an app about it, which kind of the interactive app, the Canvas feature. I'm going to have it create me an infographic first. That's going to kind of summarize all of this. And as a tip, in order to do anything with these things it's creating, you will need to be able to embed the code somewhere. So like Google Sites, you have an embed code. Canvas, if you have a Canvas page that you use for your class, you have the option to embed. So you will have to be able to go in and embed it. And I'll show you how to get that code in a minute when it finishes. But we only have 5 minutes left. Stacy, would you mind dropping that feedback link in the chat? I put it on the bottom of the document. But so we do want, while this is doing, I'll just kind of talk, we do value your feedback. It's really important to us, and it's very quick to do. But we do look at that. We analyze it. We use AI to analyze it, and we use our brains to analyze it and try to adjust our offerings for you. But it also helps us to improve. And so I do encourage you to do that. If you do, you will get a certificate emailed to the address that you use on that document for 0.1 hour CEU credit. And so I do encourage you to do the feedback. And it has created my infographic while I wasted that time. And so, as you can see, it does a really good job of distilling all of that research down and creating graphics with it. And so it shows the importance, the fastest growing skills, and notice how it's interactive also. And if you embed this on your Google site or Canvas page, it's also going to be interactive. Of course, if you do a screenshot or download a PDF, it wouldn't be. But it's talking about those durable skills of the North Carolina Portrait of the Graduate. And a lot of times it will give you multiple pages at the top that you can click through. This time I don't see a page selector up here. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But you can create, if I want to share it then if I copy contents, again, it's going to give me HTML code. So if you paste that into a Google Doc, it's going to be not anything you can read. But if you go to a website, like a Google site, you can see if you double click it and get the HTML code, change it to HTML and paste it. I've already pasted one on here, so I won't paste it, but hit next. It will be live and interactive on your website. And so the next thing that you could have done, I'll go back. And one thing I will show you that when you're finished with this, if you wanted to do something different, you have to go back into the chat and go back to this point. And so it will, so if I want to create something different with it, then it has my different, now it has my different tabs. And so I can go back in and create different things, but you will need to kind of scroll through the chat. But the other thing is an app. It will create an interactive app like a Q&A or something. You could create a Q&A asking it to, let's see if I can find the right version to show you that. So I'm going back through my chat. Okay, here's my version. And so one of the options here on the create is describe your own app. And so I'm going to say create an interactive Q&A for this research. And it will create like a little chat bot that people can interact and ask questions based on the research. And you can embed that in a Google site. And I have one of those on this site that I created earlier. I'll cancel that. That's what this is up at the top. If this were in live mode, it's kind of like your own little chat bot just based on that. And so I could ask it questions about that research, like what is PBL 2.0? And then it will, it's analyzing the data and synthesizing the findings, then it will give me an answer. And so that's the kind of things you can do with the Google Gemini deep research that you can't do with the others. Okay, and we are almost out of time, about 1 minute from being out of time. I had one more prompt we didn't get to using Canvas, but we have been in Canvas multiple times. When we created the storybook, it went to Canvas. When we went to created the presentation, it went into Canvas. And when we did the deep research, the output came into Canvas. That is that little separate, and if you're familiar with ChatGPT, it has it as well. And you can do things like we just showed you, creating the presentations and things, but you can also code live interactive simulations and all kinds of really cool things. And but to share them, you have to do the same thing I just showed you to share that the output from the deep research. You have to be able to embed them somewhere. And the more complex ones, you just need to test them and make sure they work. More complex ones require an API key if it requires internet search. So I would just test it. But you could also share the chat, and that would give somebody access to the tool. But we don't have time to go into that a lot. We also don't have time to go into building gems, but we also have fabulous webinars on our page that Stacy shared earlier on building gems and GPTs. Both Meredith, Stacy, Lindsay, and myself, and I think Jordan, I don't know if you did one that you did one somewhere else, but we have a lot of good webinars on creating gems and GPTs. And so I encourage you to look at that, but that basically is building your own custom chatbot that you can share in Google Classroom and elsewhere. I wanted to focus mostly on the web app this time anyway. And so again, I do encourage you to do the feedback. And if you have any questions, I know it's 4:30, but I'll be glad to hang around. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Anybody wants to come off mute or throw something in the chat? You're welcome. Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas. I forgot to show my Merry Christmas slide. I didn't get to it. I had one. There we go. Happy holidays. And I'm doing a webinar on January 7th on Notebook LM, really deep dive. There's some really fantastic things I found that you can do with Notebook LM. So I don't have a registration yet, but it's coming soon. Okay. Thank you, Lakita. Look forward to seeing you. Everybody have a happy holiday. Christmas.